And with this track, I'm probably gonna use the original parts, or I haven't really decided where I want to go yet. This guy, he programmed these loops. It's basically the same bass line, but he applied 3 different. I think one here is 8-bit. Really messed it up, and that's quite easy to do if I decide to do another one. But I think I keep the bass line on this track. But otherwise, I would use the trilogy always, and because it's really good. You get a sound. Patches. So let's go something. But actually, I have a few presets on here. Okay. Oh, instrument 11. Let's find a cleaner one. So this is a typical, I would say, funky house bass sound. But the great thing with this one is you can actually load another sound on the B. Get something really nasty. Let's see, filter. And that's what I love with this one, because you can have these really solid sounds. So you get the bass, and then you can add the dirt as well. And as you go, you can sort of work with these. You can even do automation. So you bring the dirt down if it's really busy, and in breaks, when you need things to be more exciting, you add it up again. So this one is really outstanding, and I think it's sample based. I don't know if you know. I think that it's not. It doesn't create the sounds. It loads different samples, and they made it. It never cancels out. If you use for instance, that one and an embosker, for instance, they might cancel each other out. They phase out. Yeah, but it never happens with that. I have no idea how they managed to get these waveforms to match, but it's probably really clever and tight editing of the samples. So this one is definitely a killer. There are other ones. You know, the ATC1 is also very good. Let me show you that one.
How do you find yourself ever getting stuck in sort of ruts on things like bass lines? Because especially with bass lines dominating a lot of records now, it's quite easy to find yourself following a trend by accident. Just you know when you sort of
Absolutely. You know, I was stuck on this one, number 11, Beautiful Dream, I think it's called, preset, and it's just really solid. And I have this tube EQ, so it's been sitting like that for 5 years. And depending on what key it is, you can sort of bring the mid out or bring the treble right down and the sub up. It's really great, and it gives that warmth. I mean, it's analog already, and with this on, I find it. You know, I was really stuck. You know, I loved it. But then I got the trilogy, and I realized you can get the warmth, but you can still get that nasty thing, and you can blend different sounds to create completely original new sounds.
So if people don't have trilogy, you would say try and blend the sounds anyway, like maybe a couple of soft synths or a couple of.
Yeah, you can do that, but that's the beauty. Yeah, of course. Sometimes I add a third one and I stick a really serious flanger on it or something and bit crush it, and just keep it in the background.
Similar to what the guys are doing.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he's got this philosophy. He runs Cubase, and he's only got 2 synths and maybe 1 soft synth, but he knows them, every little detail of those things. He really works his gear until he gets it right, and then he creates samples, like small pieces, 2-bar loops, and then he mixes them, he bounces them down as audio, and then he stops it with the MIDI. It's all audio, but he's created his own samples. It's a very interesting way of working. But I like Choice, you know, I love all these soft synths, but for bass, I think we tried the Mini Monster, few others, and I find that the bottom end is not quite there. And that's usually a problem with the soft synths. You know, it sounds full and grey, but you can't compare it with the analog. You know, it's something missing there in the bottom end.
Did you, in your experience, you've been through using real bass players, had them in, jacked
Yeah.
them in? How do you find that in terms of house music production?
It works. Let's see if let's pick the clean one. It sounds pretty much like a live bass. This one. Gotta move that higher. Bass. Let's see what it is. It's native. Bass a little bit different. What I'll do then, if this was a live bass, you know, this is what I would use. So I would use the big system. And then you have to find where the whole energy sits. You stick you can kill everything below 20. You sort of sweep through here. This is where the real energy sits. Put a little compression on it. You can actually sidechain here as well, which is really cool. We have to. This is always a problem with TDM, because the bass is now in the native section, so we have to copy a kick to native 6 there.
Oh, so you can't sidechain from.
No, exactly. So what you have to do, you. I think you can actually turn it off. So we sidechain it to, was it 6? And the great thing with this, not only do you get that pumping effect, but you also, the kick is completely on its own, so it doesn't interfere. Because sometimes it's a big problem, because the bass and the kick is in the same register. So you have to choose, either you have a huge bass, like in drum and bass, the kicks are not that heavy, quite small, or as in house, you really need your kick drum. So then it's a great idea to sidechain and just experiment with the release. If you want, when it starts to groove, you know, then it's right. And this is also good if you sidechain everything a little bit. You don't really need to compress the hell out of the track later, because a lot of people think that it's on the master it all happens. Let's bring in an L1 here. You can do it here, of course, as well. But then you destroy the treble, everything starts to, it gets really jumpy. So you can actually achieve the same results by using sidechain on a lot of things, loops. Yeah, we had the loop here already. So it sounds like one of those really heavily compressed. But you still have the full bandwidth, nothing is really over compressed or destroyed. You still have the high register and the... That was really cool, actually. And then it's a good idea, when you like the setting, you save it. It's always a great idea to save a lot of settings. And then once I got the bass and the drums, and if it's a vocal mix, the vocal is all done, and I've done a sort of a rough arrangement where I want to go, how long it's going to be, just a little sort of a demo intro. I mean, there are different different ideas there too. Some people, they start with the breakdown. I know Steve, he loves that. He starts with the breakdown and where it kicks in, because in a dance record, that's really the main point, you know, where it all goes off. So it starts there, and then he sort of builds his track around there. I'm a bit more old school in that sense, you know. I try to see, okay, how long it's going to be. This is the first verse, or if I have a vocal, you know, where's the vocal going to go, where's the break going to be, and then that's the great thing with Logic and Cubase, because it's all so graphical. You see, you know, when there's a lot of traffic and how it looks visually. So I do the drums and bass and keys, and then I start to look maybe a little bit on the intro, what kind of vibe I want, if I want a real aggressive vibe or a clean building kind of thing. So I leave a lot of these things open until I have the bass and I know what kind of energy the track will have. If it's a more laid back mix, you know, people that like that sort of mixes, they want more music, you know, like a cool sort of maybe more beach house kind of thing. And people that want slamming club mixes, they don't want too much music going on, you know. It must be simpler, cleaner. So I never really know, and it's also down to the vocal. If it's really slow vocal, you know, it can be hard to whip it up, you know. You might have to take another approach, or as I showed you on the other track, the single. It's quite soulful track, so I decided to, you know, skip the drums where he sings, basically, and then it kicks in without the vocals. This is my new single, and I commissioned a lot of mixes. I had the album version, which is okay, it's funky house for the girls, and then I commissioned all these mixes, and everybody loved the vocals so much, so I got like 12 full vocal mixes. And I was thinking, even Rob Rivera used almost the whole vocal, which is unusual. So I decided I had to go in myself and do a mix, you know, a chunky club mix. No, it's vocal still, but it's more like I use the vocal in breakdowns. And it's quite a big vocal on this one. At this stage, I had already simplified. I mixed a few of the backing vocals together. We can check in the second verse. There's a lot of extra backing vocals and harmonies coming in everywhere.
So how long would it usually take you to, say, record vocals? Would you do a day, or would you do every?
Well, it's done in stages. I have the track, and then I usually send the track as often as someone in the UK. So I send an MP3, and they write the song, and they cut a guide, and then I get the guide vocal back, and I program the track and I change it to enhance it around the vocal. And then either I fly into the UK or they come here, and we record a track. Try not to go away from the original vibes. I sometimes end up using the demo vocal, because it's very dangerous to, if you do it over and over again, you start to think about phrases and how to sing it, rather than, you know, the original idea when it's fresh. So I try to get them to record even the rough in a proper studio with a good mic, and think about not having a friend chatting in the corner and, you know, flicking a page or something. So it's usually quite good files. This is Kenny Thomas singing. He's an old soul boy from the UK, and he went to a proper studio, so I got an a cappella.
Which studio do you
I don't, yeah, I do actually. I will give you my album later. It's a guy called Andy Blake. He works with a lot of up and coming singers, and he's got a room. It's pretty good. So I got all the separate files. I got an a cappella first and work with, and I sent him the track. Yeah, I love it, and then I got all the parts. But it was quite, it was a big room sound. So it was quite I had to work a lot with to get that room filtered out from all the files. There was a lot of you know, rumbling, things like that. It's very common. I've noticed on club mixes, you know, with up and coming guys. You know, the biggest mistake is that they don't filter out the bass and the vocal. So in breakdowns, you hear puffs and things like that. It's so easy, you know, but no one probably told them, you know, so they forget it. So let's look at the.
I think a lot of people forget generally how much stuff you can get rid of.
Yes.
Frequency-wise, to make stuff sound bigger, you actually get rid of stuff.
Absolutely, and there's another thing that sometimes it's better, if you want more treble, it's better to take out the bass instead of cranking up. And I think in the digital world, it's better to take things away than adding, really. So let's see what we got here. Okay, let's this is the I can play you the concept. It's changed. You know, these days it's very difficult to make a standard arrangement. You have the intro, this little breakdown, and then verse comes, bridge, chorus, and then verse, bridge. People can't handle that. It's too much information. So if you want to do vocal, you have to do a drop almost, you know, without the drums, and so the musical bits are broken down, and then you have harder parts for dancing, you know, like just drums and bass. So this is one of the first where I actually tried that formula, because I've been kind of
would you say that was a recent change then?
yeah, it was this girl Sia. I did a remix, The Girl You Lost to Cocaine, and it was a great song. It's a live band, and I got this massive session. It was recorded in 48K as well, so it was a nightmare. I had to convert everything, and it was 96 48. Yeah, totally overboard. It was beautifully recorded, overhead and everything, but I realized that it was such a quirky vocal that it couldn't work with the beats. You know, it was just too messy. So I broke it down. Basically, you know, you have the sort of a electronic vibe, and then yeah. So the music is filtered down. You get a little vocal. Because normally this would be the intro breakdown without vocals, but you know you can put the vocal on top. It doesn't change anything. So this is basically the album version, but on that version it's full drums and bass and everything. It's more like a structured song. And then you have instrumental passes like that, and then sort of builds up a little bit, and then the second verse comes in. I decided to keep the it's like both verses are in and the choruses, but there are no instrumental passes, you know, like with the full music, so to speak. And then it's a little piano drop in the end. But on this one, since I already worked on it for ages for the album version, it was pretty much EQ'd. But what I normally do on a vocal is, I gotta save it. Take a little backup here. The first thing I do is focus right again and get rid of everything down here.
Up to what?
Yeah, this
90,
is
100 hertz.
yeah, maybe 120, depends a little bit. I just do that all the time, and then I try to find where the attitude is. And if I want really bright, sometimes it's a breathy vocal and you want that, then you have to, you can do that, but you need a de-esser. And they're so sympathetic. They have male S. So you can really go crazy on the treble if you want. But it's always a good idea to take it away and see. Maybe it was better without. Because it gets kind of so you have to be careful with this. De-esser is great, and it's really good to use on hi-hats as well. Because the way I noticed, sometimes in mastering they use de-esser on the whole track. It's very common, especially for treble. In the vinyl days, you couldn't get that much treble onto vinyl because it's distorted, so they had to de-ess it. And that's why I got the idea to try to de-ess hi-hats. It's really good. You get all that nasty shit, basically. You want the treble, but you don't want that hard, sort of high-mid thing. And it's really good with de-esser.
It's really good.
Yeah, and then the second thing you do, especially in dance music, is pretty heavy compression. And I always use a really short attack and release, so it takes the the peaks. It depends a little bit on. You can't really say a value on threshold because if it's recorded loud, then you need a little threshold. But this one's quite low. And you look on this thing, so you see it takes the peaks. And when it comes to effects, if I want a special effect like a flange or something, I put it on the channel. But I have a short reverb. This is mainly for drum sounds, but sometimes the vocal. Depends on what kind of vibe I want in the vocal. But I love my long delays and reverbs. So I have a pretty long Renaissance reverb here.
Can we listen to the vocal dry and then just
Absolutely.
those effects on?
So this is completely dry, and then I have this TC delay. There used to be, because I'm working TDM, we used to have this free tape delay, which is the one from Logic, but they stopped doing that with OS 10, unfortunately. So I use this one. Sometimes I put the vocal on the native tracks just to get that, because it's one of the best delays, and it's so cool to program as well. But this is my standard big delay that I always have on the auxiliaries here. And then it's a pretty big it's a big reverb. I don't have that much on it. Just to get a stereo thing in the background. So on this track it's basically these two I use. And I already worked this. Sometimes you have to auto-tune, and I usually, if it's not too bad, I don't do it because it takes away a lot of the feeling. But if it's really bad, I take that phrase, put it down on another track and stick the auto-tune on there.
Okay.
Not the whole thing. And it's trend, for a while there everything was auto-tuned. It seems to be a sort of reverse trend now. People want more natural sounds, and sometimes it's cool it's a bit of an attitude if it's slightly flat, it can be like a rock thing. So that's basically, that's the lead vocal. And then when it comes to backing vocals.
You've got a lot of automation and
Yeah, I do. It's basically the same, but you want the lead vocal to stand out, so you don't exaggerate the mid as much. And it's always the cut the bass. Usually like that, but I've already done it 2 or 3 times on this vocal, so it doesn't really require. But if you get the files, backing vocals are always muddy, and people, don't be shy, just go crazy on the high end, because they don't need to be that loud. It depends, of course, on some tracks. The backing vocal is the chorus. Then you have to work differently. But if there is a lead vocal and you have backing vocals, you can make them wide and sort of a bit drier in the background, just to support the
How would you
lead.
make them wide? Just through pannings and double tracking, or?
Well, if I have a whole package, separated, like it's a 3-part harmony, for instance, I pan them out all the way. Sometimes you only have 3 lead vocals, and you want to make a backing vocal out of it. Then you might want to do, you can detune and put 1 to the left and 1 sort of -1 to the left and then +1 to the right, and you get this weird chorus vibe. You can't tell that it's out of tune. It's just a little bit, but it creates this crazy wide thing. But you have to check with the mono switch that it doesn't phase out and you get weird things. It's always good to run the mix through in mono, especially for the vocals.
And for clubs.
Yeah, and for clubs. It's always a good idea.
So
Yeah.
how do you usually do your automation? Do you go in and do it mouse, or do you ride faders?
I put the fade on volume, and then I just before I do that, I listen through, and I have sort of in this case 65 on the lead seems to be a good sort of general value. But sometimes you need to. This is the repetition thing, and it's really annoying if it's the same. What you do is you make the effect louder and louder, and the sort of lead goes down. So then you do a ride. You don't have to do it, but it sounds less stiff. Something happened, and this is quite. I did a lot of work on this vocal. I probably did 3 or 4 hyperdraw sessions on the album version, so it's already done on this one. So it's not quite as dramatic as it can be, but you know, you can spend a day just tweaking a little word here. You know, it's such a big difference if you do it. The best trick is to listen really low, and it depends on what kind of track. If you have, you know, but if there is a vocal, it's always a good thing to be able to hear what they sing, even if it's dance music, you know, because otherwise it's just a muddy thing in the background. So I think it's worth spending a lot of time on these things. And it sometimes if the singer's not that great, you know, the microphone technique is not. A professional singer if they sing a really loud phrase, they would back off a little bit. But some of the lesser experienced, they sing at the same distance to the mic. So some phrases are, and sometimes they look the other way, maybe look at the lyric sheet, so you get that treble goes away. So that's why it's a good thing to make sure that you hear every word. And if you go in from a big instrumental part, you know, the first word can always be exaggerated a little bit, so you sort of hear that it comes in. That's a great trick too. And then I used
any particular things, sorry, to look out for. Have you come across any sort of, like, always happens when they sing this, or always happens when, you know, I use this type of mic, or is there a kind of a thing that you always get where maybe automating on volumes might be a problem? Just the inexperience, or?
It can be. No, not really. But I've noticed that sometimes when it's really out of tune, instead of auto tuning, let's say that this word here, right here, there's a little a dip or something. What you do is you stick a little bit more delay, and then you just bring that right down. And if you have the delay will sort of continue with that. It's a really good trick. And also some singers have a difficulty to keep the long notes, so you put a delay on it or a reverb, and then you crank down, you know, this is the critical area, then you just bring it down and you bring the effect up instead. And it's you can actually get a lot of tuning problems fixed that way, I've noticed. And another trick that I used to put delay on the whole lead, and it can be, you know, it takes away the, you know, the vocal comes into the track a little bit. You know, if you want a bit more up front and more effect, what you do is you put a copy of the lead vocal on another track and put a serious delay on it, and then you see what sounds good. You know, they gather. So these are the delay. Of course, you can automate that as well, but so it's that one. So I've started to do that a lot. You know, I cut down and what sounds good with lots of delay, I put on the other track. And
comp together.
yeah, and sometimes I write the. Let's see, I didn't do that on this one. You can hear all the parameters, so you can sort of exactly. In Logic, on this tape delay, it's 54 is the last one. If you do more than 54, it starts to change. You know, it degrades. It can be really cool, but it just goes on forever. So you sort of have to automate it, and so you can do great effects, especially. For instance, I didn't do it on this particular mix, but this would be a great to make that longer and longer. So in the end, it's just you can't hear what it says anymore. It's just trash. a delayed crash. That's the beauty with automation. I mean, it makes the mixes much more dynamic.
Have you found that sort of seeing technology changes, the automation thing? I mean, obviously it's really useful. You found you can get caught up in it a little bit.
A little bit, you know. It's sometimes you can destroy. Everything works. You program it, and then you're happy with it. And then you start with one thing, and then you realize, oh God, I have to fix that other thing as well. And then you end up in a mess. But most of the time, it's actually because it gets really boring if it's static. You know, nothing happens. And there's so much you can do. Let's see if I'm anything a bit more crazy on this one. Things like this little sequence. This was an accident. There was a sequence and I put it on a... It's really this sound. And I had a pad sound and I accidentally put the sequence on another track and I got this. So it's basically a little vibe in the background. But with automation you can exaggerate it to make, for instance, here the pad, the bass in the pad goes down, and then this atmospheric thing. So before a major part here, we're building up here tension. You can sort of crank it up more and more, but you can't really tell what it is. It's just something gets more powerful. So it's a great way. Otherwise, you have to add more and more stuff, and soon you don't hear anything because there's too much information. So automation makes it easier to play with less, I suppose. Less is always more, as we know. Okay, sometimes you get a vocal, the performance is just great, but the sound quality is a mess. And this is one of those. It was an album track. I sent the instrumental to the singer, and she refused to come here to work. She had to record at home. And so I got these files, and it's really no trouble at all. Let's see, we got her. Oh, it's a stereo file. Excellent. What we'll do is we'll move it to the... Again, the native versus TDM problem. You can't play stereo files with TDM. You have to make them two files. It's really quiet. It's almost not. And the treble. And if you really crank it up, you hear?
Hope is nothing.
It's like all kinds of hum and stuff going on. So I think I did this in 3 or 4 different. I started with the crisis management first to get the most of the bass out.
Here, I'm all alone in here without you,
which you always should get rid of.
in my life. Hope is nothing.
But you can't do too much because then she doesn't sound human anymore.
By my side, here, I'm all alone in here.
And then you have to try to cut out. I see now that I had already done some work on this.
Yeah, I'm all alone in here.
It's really hard to edit. It's so really not registering almost. And then once you've done that, because we're exaggerating the treble a bit, you go for a de-esser. That S, for instance.
I'm all alone in here without you in my life.
There was a side here somewhere.
When you're not by my side,
So we can loop that section.
by my side, by my side, by my side.
And now the de-esser sort of made the whole thing a bit dull again. So we can go back and
Hope,
tweak it a little bit more.
hope is nothing.
And then recently I discovered that vintage warmer is actually really good on vocals. So let's stick that one on top. Because it's got a wicked compressor as well.
Hope is nothing when you're not by my side. Hope, hope is nothing.
And then you hear those lip sounds. Those can be
Hope,
actually drawn out in Logic.
hope is
I'm sure it's the same in
nothing
Cubase. They have the pen as well, huh?
when you're not. Hope is nothing.
There we go. The easiest way is to loop that section
Hope is nothing.
somewhere in this area.
Is nothing. Hope is nothing. Hope is nothing.
See if we can find a little. It's probably this little nasty waveform. What you do is you grab the pen, and you have to be really careful to follow the curve. Yeah, that should do it.
Hope is nothing. Hope is nothing.
It's still there,
Hope
but it's better.
is nothing.
And it gets better after a
Hope
few.
is nothing. Hope is nothing. Hope is nothing. Hope is nothing.
See if we can get it away completely. It's really hard to find because I don't want to normalize the vocal either, because it's a 16-bit file, you know, and you get a lot of extra shit from the file, you know. So that's what you gotta do, really. And then I usually, in this stage, I bounce it because it's a lot better now, and then you can do it again, but a little bit more subtle, instead of just putting 8 or 9 things on it.
So I mean, there's some quite extreme gating on that vocal. Is that something that's been previously done, or is that her?
Yeah, I did it. When I got it, it was that hum all over, because she recorded it at night with headphones. She didn't really hear, and that's a problem, especially with 16-bit. If you record this low, it's really hard. You have to sort of you have to compress it, and then you have to cut out the sound. But then the problem you have is that
hope is nothing.
it's a vibe, and it completely,
When you're not
it gets too quiet
by
almost.
my side.
Which you can cover up with effects, of course. If you put a delay on this, you won't hear the silences, obviously.
Without you
That's
in my life.
so you won't really notice.
Oh,
But you can rescue almost anything. The only thing you can't rescue is if someone sings in a really big room, and it's too not close enough to the mic, and you get too much of the echo in the room, the natural echo. That's impossible to tweak. Then you have to send them back, and it's good to know when you record, try to record as close as possible, but not straight, but keep the mic like that, otherwise you get the puffs, and stuff like that, and roll off a little bit of the bass as you record, because then you can record louder, and a little compression as well, not too much, but just a little bit, to get the bits, you know, as much volume as possible in the file.
So when you compress, when you've got somebody in there recording, you go through.
Yeah, I use the Calrec
Calrec.
coming in, and it's got a really nice EQ as well. It's already on quite serious plus there. So I recorded with a bit of EQ. I mean, some guys argue you should record it clean, but I don't see the point. You know, you can use a little, you know, make it sound as good as you can on the way in. I mean, not too much, obviously, and depends on the singer. Some singers have really a lot of treble, or they have lisping or some other thing, you know, going on. It depends a little bit, but with a bit weaker singers, it's a great help to EQ on the way in, because you can record louder and get better dynamics in your vocal.
Have you got any techniques for what your singer hears, confidence and stuff? With singing?
Yeah,
you
well,
said with this girl particularly,
she didn't want to come here. I think she would do an amazing job here, but you know, the confidence thing is very important, and you have to imagine, I mean, you're safe in your studio. This is where you work and you know where everything is. But a new person coming in, they've never been here, they don't know the vibe, and so they're really nervous. So the first thing you should do is just talk about it. One guy taught me a really good trick, is that you do a rough vocal the first day. No pressure, and I was like, oh, we only have 2 minutes, how can you gotta wrap it up? Just cool and easy, record a thing, and then send the singer home with a rough, you know, comp. You pick a few lines and you make it sort of okay, and then they can go home and listen to it and analyze it themselves, and then the next day you'll get a much better performance. Sometimes we don't have time, so the best thing is to have a coffee and a chat, you know, listen to the track and make it really relaxed and easy. And then it's very important that the first thing that hits tape, you know, that you don't say, oh, what the hell was that, you know, you can't go, and go easy, even if it's flat or out of tune. The out of tune thing can often be that they're listening too loud in the phones, or the vocal is too loud in comparison to the music. So they don't actually hear the music, they only hear themselves. And some singers have their own key, you know. The brain thinks that they're in key, but they're like a quarter note high or low. So headphone mix is very important, and also something that singers love is effects. If you record dry, you get no vibe, because when they stop singing, it's dead, nothing happens. But if it's a little delay and reverb, they feel like it's a cool thing, you know.
A bit of that.
Yeah, and especially when you do ad-libs, put a lot of delay on, they love it. And you get really good, because they get so excited hearing themselves and all that stuff. So you get a much better performance that way.
What about using autotune as an effect? Like if you ever had that in their ears?
Oh, that's lethal. Well, some say you can, but the brain doesn't work, because one thing comes out, and then what you hear is something that's been processed and not the same. So it confuses the brain a little bit. So this is a great trick if you got a single vocal, but a hook is repeated. Like on this one, it's
you don't know what you do to me. You don't know.
Sometimes you're out of luck. That the second one goes down a little bit. You can still use it, but luckily I think he does it one more time here.
What?
So what you do to create a phony double is just basically you take from the first one, this is the lead track, so you take the second one, stick it under the first, and then the first one and stick it under the second.
You don't know what you do to me. You don't know.
And if you're lucky, you got 3.
You don't know what you do to me. You don't know.
And if you don't, we can use that second one that changes in the end and just edit that out. So I'll stick it 2, 4, 1.
You don't know.
Actually, it works anyway. And when you got 2, that's great, because that means you can pan.
You don't know what you do to me. You don't know.
Actually, this one is actually quite easy to see graphically where it's going to be.
You don't know.
And if you like this guy, he's a bit rushed on this one. Actually, don't be afraid to move it. You see where the second thing comes in? Just cut it up and move it like that. Works like a charm.
You don't know what
Now that you got two doubles, you can actually pan these two. Like that. And all of a sudden you got a backing vocal.
you don't know.
Really
What
nice
you do
stereo
to
on
me.
certain things.
You don't know.
Again, you know, I'm using, I have 3 auxes set up. One long delay, one big room, and then a delay, and a short room. The short one is mainly for drums, but sometimes you can get a really cool effect with lead vocals as well. It's sort of you get that 80s studio vibe. Like
So
this.
they're auxes that are permanently set up on your.
Yes, I have that on my auto low. Because I tend to use the same, but sometimes I use dedicated effects. You can use a flanger if you want.
What you do to me. You don't know.
Personally, I hate this kind of effect on vocal, you know. But if
You
it's
don't
a
know.
if it's a dirty vocal, like a girl being nasty or something, it doesn't really fit with the big delay, the big sound. So then it can be quite efficient with that sort of thing.
You don't know.
The only thing with delay is that when you've done like a bogus backing vocal, if it's not exactly like the lead vocal, the fault will sort of get delayed, and you will hear, especially with this one going down, you might get a funny thing.
You don't know. What you do
You
to
might hear the
me.
mistake repeated in the right channel, but sometimes that's a cool thing, you know, I suppose.
You don't know. What you do to me.
Yeah, and also you can apply the other technique. You can have a whole separate track, for instance, if you want a delay on
What you do to me.
the me. You don't want the rest repeated, but you want a serious delay on the me. Just copy it down to another track, and you have a serious delay on that. Let's see, there we go. Some guys, they have dedicated like a quarter delay, and then like 3 or 4 different delays, and just bring the vocal down, the one you want a lot of delay on.
What you do to me. You don't know.
So that's
You
easier.
do to me. You don't know.
You could also, I suppose, you could put a delay on here and use automation. But, you know, once you start doing that, you go crazy, and then you want to change the arrangement, you have to move these. Sometimes the automation doesn't follow, and you're in a mess. 5 hours work, gone. So I think this manual technique, it's more control.
You don't know. What you do to me. You don't know.
So if you want something extreme, like a delay on just one phrase, better to copy it down and put the effect on there.